No problem.
Sure. So, I guess in the interest of clarity, I'd like to briefly summarize the parameters for this exchange. Like, my debate proposition is that, of course, vegans don't exist, and I welcome any and all attempts to change my mind on that. So, I assume that you're going to be debating the proposition that vegans do exist, or do you want me to convince you that vegans don't exist?
Yes, I do think that vegans do exist. I'm curious your case for vegans not existing and why I'm wrong for thinking that vegans do exist.
Okay. So my debate proposition relies on the, I guess, widely held and contested definitions of veganism. I guess like the most common being from the Vegan Society says that veganism is a way of living which seeks to exclude as far as is possible and practicable all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. Would you accept that as a adequate definition of veganism?
Well, it's not the definition that I would hold personally. I mean, like, I know what you're saying, because not like most vegans don't do what's possible and practicable to reduce animal suffering. And this is actually a contention I had with veganism. So this is why I think veganism needs to have a more rigid definition that talks more about just what the average vegan lives like. And that would be, my definition of the average vegan. So I really think of it as like principles of sentientism. So it's like doing certain things because you think that sentient beings are valuable. So like avoiding animal products, not buying fur, etc. And you may see it as just kind of like a list of things that you may think are arbitrary, but I think they have their benefits, and I don't really see an alternative to it. I think it's important not to equivocate veganism to morality, because at that point, very low level immoral things would be then not vegan. So then there are less vegans, and then, obviously more animal suffering. Vegans need to feel secure. They need to feel united for there to be even more vegans. So yeah, I just don't hold that definition. So to my definition, yes, vegans do exist. To that definition, I'm sure still are vegans who exist. They're doing what's possible and practicable. What's possible and practicable is subjective. I think that you can epistemically tell whether someone is actually doing all that they can or not. So I don't know where you get the idea that they don't exist.
Well, the reason that I say that vegans don't exist, I guess my debate proposition relies on, I guess, in this case, the Vegan Society definition. That's what I'm basing it off of.
So what's your argument for there being no vegans according to that definition?
Well, of course, we established that the Vegan Society definition is the correct one. But
I don't agree with that, but I'll accept it on these measures. I still don't agree that no vegans exist according to that definition. I think that some vegans do exist according to that definition. So like, yeah.
Okay, sure. So then you're going to be defending the position that vegans do exist according to the Vegan Society definition.
I'm sure some vegans do follow that definition and they live accordingly.
Okay, so my argument is that vegans can't exist according to this definition.
Okay.
So you can accept, right? So you can accept just for the sake of argument that vegans can exist according to this definition, and I will be rejecting that.
Say that again?
Well, I'll be saying that vegans don't exist according to this definition. And you will be saying that they do, right? Yeah. Okay. So I just read you the definition. There's already like a criterion that's established at the very beginning. It's possible and practicable. I think they're terms used here to condone like some level of exploitation and cruelty while condemning any amount beyond that. Would you agree?
Yes, but I think when they're talking about reasonable and practicable, at least this is my interpretation of it.
Well,
they're like, what is
possible? There's no reasonable in the definition.
Or what?
There's no reasonable in the definition. It's just practicable and possible.
Well, practicable and possible. Yes, you can do everything that's practicable and possible to reduce animal exploitation. And if it's not possible, you can't do it. So, like hypothetically, I
what
could think of
possible
a vegan
means.
that does do that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, how can a vegan not do what's possible to, possible within their, within what they're, capable of doing? How could they not do that? Like, I just think the
That's not
possibility is
my
out
point.
there, and with how many people there are, I think that it's probable that there is a vegan who is living like that. Do you think that it's impossible to live like that?
I do. What you just said, though, isn't my argument. I'm not arguing that you can't reduce animal exploitation or exclude animal exploitation and cruelty as far as is possible and practicable. I'm saying if you follow that reasoning logically, then it entails, I guess, an unpalatable reductio that I think many people wouldn't be willing to accept.
What would be the well? I don't really understand because it sounds like you just conceded because you said that some vegans do live to that definition and they meet that
I didn't
criteria.
say that. I said I didn't say that.
Well, then, restate what you are saying then.
Okay. Well, let's just make sure we're following each other. So, my point is that this is just a notoriously weak guideline when establishing moral systems. And it's just especially weak considering how the words chosen to represent the criterion are defined. So my basis is on how the words possible and practical are defined, and the reductio on that would be that vegans don't exist. So it's not that they can't follow that. It's that if they do follow that, they won't exist.
See, so, well, I agree for one that we shouldn't be using possible and practicable in like the vegan definition. I just think it makes it, unnecessarily vague. But I think we definitely have like different definitions of possible.
Oh, totally.
So like
it's evident that this definition is shrouded in obscurity. But I think if we take exactly what it says and follow it to its logical conclusion, the problems we'll find are abundantly clear.
I don't know why you'd assume it's logical to just hold these certain definitions of possible and practicable. Because when I hear like, oh, it's impossible for me to do this, like I wouldn't then jump to like, oh, well, you can kill yourself. Like that's a feasible possibility, and especially with practicable. If you're holding them both, it's not practicable to like kill yourself if that's what you're trying to get at.
Okay, sure.
So
well,
yeah, I need more clarity. Is like what I'm trying to say.
Right. So we can definitely go with that. So I think the words possible and practicable, of course, need to be defined so we understand exactly to what extent exploitation and cruelty to animals must be excluded from a given lifestyle for that lifestyle to be considered a vegan one, right?
Yes.
So both are colloquially defined as just a capacity in which is able to be done.
Okay.
Yeah. And
well, capacity to be able to be done. I mean, when I'm talking about possible, I don't think I would really define it that way. I'd say like capacity to be able to be done, but not really in that sense. I'd make it more like rigid. I don't have like a definition of possible on hand, but it wouldn't be that like vague. Like it wouldn't, or it just wouldn't be that like absolutist.
Okay. So I'm going off of the Google definition. The Google definitions of possible and practicable are any capacity which is able to be done. And I think the use of the common Google definitions here are perfectly valid considering you've actually used Google in the past to construct your own moral system, right?
But yeah, I think I don't think it's invalid to use a Google definition, but I don't see how
I don't see the objection.
I don't see how my definition would be invalid in virtue of that definition. So I don't know why I have to bootstrap your definition just because it comes from Google or it's the top Google definition.
It's not my definition; it's the Google definition, and you've used.
Now, why should I accept it?
Because you've used Google in the past to establish your own moral systems.
No, that doesn't follow. Just because I've used Google in the past doesn't mean I need to follow everything Google says.
Okay, sure. So can you tell me why you accept Google definitions in one context but not the other?
fits my interpretation of a word, and it fits what I want accomplished by the word, because I think we can use words as tools to accomplish the type of worlds we want, such as like putting what we do to cows in the category of rape. I think that is conducive to, like, for example, what a vegan would want. So yeah, if it fits my interpretation, it fits my interpretation and what I want it to.
Sure. So this fits
accomplish.
my interpretation.
Okay, so how am I wrong for having a different interpretation?
Never said you were wrong. This is how I interpret it.
Okay, then the way I interpret it, vegans exist.
Okay. Well, then the way I interpret it is that vegans don't exist, according to the definition.
Well, yeah, like this is why I think it's kind of pointless to debate this, because it's like, if you're going to build an argument on semantics, I can disregard it with semantics.
Right. So I've actually given you a definition for possible and practicable, but you haven't. So how could you say that what I'm saying is wrong?
And on why that would be required.
Well, do you have a replacement? Because we need some benchmark by which to base off of our interpretations of the word possible and practicable, which you haven't presented me with.
Well, if I bootstrap your definition, then yes, I agree. Like, it's possible to like kill yourself, and that would reduce the suffering. I mean, as far as I know, it could be possible that if you don't kill yourself, more animal suffering would be prevented. So it's possible and practicable to reduce even more by not killing yourself. But like, this is why I'm saying I need more clarity, because you're not actually saying like in what way, do you want to just be a little bit more specific with the conclusion of your argument, like what's logically entailed when you follow the vegan society definition?
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
So, well, I think not only do we see like a redundancy when we include two words in the same criterion with the same meaning, right? Possible and practicable are both defined as the capacity which is able to be done. I don't know why we would even need that. We could just use one word. But even pragmatically, I think this definition falls apart for several reasons, namely that it necessitates that its adherents exclude, quote, all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals for any purpose in any way that is able to be done. And I think the problem with this is that ending your own existence is the most effective means by which to stop exploiting or acting cruelly to animals. And since it is also possible and practicable, that is, within a capacity which is able to be done, the reductio on this definition is suicide.
So what if there's a vegan who's about to kill himself? Or like, do they not exist? Or are they not vegan until they kill themselves?
Yep. The latter.
Well, that's interesting, but like I said, I don't know if I would really follow that definition of like possible and practicable. In the way I see it, I wouldn't even see possible and practicable to be like the same word, because I think practicable means like it can be effectively done like over and over again.
I'm not saying they're the same word. I'm saying they're defined the same. So it's redundant to include them both in the same criterion.
Well, I don't even know if that was their intention behind making it. And like I said, I'm not here to completely defend it, but like, for practicable, the way I see it is something that can be done like effectively over and over again. But with possible, it's like, yeah, killing yourself is possible, but it's not practicable, so it doesn't reach the all of the criterions.
Can you repeat to me what your definition of practicable is?
Practicable would be like it can be effectively done over and over again, like not infinitely, obviously, but that possible. I guess I'll just go with your definition for this. Like, I wouldn't always follow it, but like,
okay,
just off the top of my head, I can't think of my own.
Mm-hmm. So I think exploitation and cruelty are inevitable as long as you exist, right? Otherwise, the definition wouldn't have included a criterion that permitted some amount of exploitation and cruelty.
Right.
And even proponents of this definition, including actually like the founder of Anonymous for the Voiceless, Paul Bashir, he agrees with me that the only way to exclude all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals is to kill yourself. So I don't think it's controversial to assert that.
Well, yeah, well, this is my problem with the definition. It's like exclude. If you mean by exclude, like there is some that justifies like more. I don't know if that would be permissible under the vegan society definition, but it's like just from my standpoint, I think it would be kind of irrational to say that killing yourself is the only way to reduce exploitation, because if anything, you might have lived, you might have become a great activist, and you might have reduced the suffering way more than if you killed yourself, and killing yourself would create suffering and that sort of thing. And that's a little bit, besides the point, but I just thought that was an informative thing to get into. But yeah.
Yeah. So the definition isn't talking about including anything into your lifestyle. It's not talking about maximizing any principle in the definition. It's talking about the abstination of contribution to exploitation and cruelty.
If your interpretation of the vegan society definition is just never like cause suffering, like that's what
not
it
my
bottoms out to,
interpretation.
then yeah.
My interpretation is
Okay,
verbatim the definition of exploitation and cruelty and how it logically follows to suicide.
What's your criteria for something being the definition of something?
Google.
Oh, right. So you're saying that anything that Google says is right? So that's like whatever definition Google says is the right definition?
Yeah.
Right. So, and like you said, you're fine with me just rejecting that, so I don't know why I should accept it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why you would reject it, though, because you've used it in the past. To construct your own moral systems, you've used Google.
Like I said, like I can use Google in some situations, not use Google in different situations. I'm not using a definition because it's from Google. It's because it fits my interpretation.
Sure. I can share that same sentiment then.
Yeah, so then we would like agree to disagree. So I don't know why you would want to debate this.
Well, my debate proposition is that it follows from my interpretation of possible and practicable.
And it follows my interpretation from possible and practicable that vegans do exist.
Mm-hmm. So what is your interpretation of the criterion then?
Interpretation of the criterion to the vegan society definition?
Yeah. Oh, possible and practicable. What do you think
possible? So practicable, like I said, is something you can effectively do, over and over again. And then possible is just, whatever is. Well, it's kind of hard to define possible. I'd have to kind of think about that for a second. But yeah, I think that certainly to be a vegan under the vegan society definition, you would need to do a hell of a lot more than the majority of people. I think it would have to be said that if it was necessary, like you didn't have any other choice. And if it could be said that you could have any other choice, like I think what they mean by possible in this sense, or what I would personally mean by possible in the sense if I was trying to defend this definition, would be anything that is possible within the realm of like me existing and my well-being and that sort of thing. Like meat isn't necessary for my well-being because I can just go eat some lab meat or Beyond Meat or whatever, but like I can't kill myself. Like there's no like that's just off limits to that definition. Yeah, that's basically how I define it.
Okay. All right. So let's say hypothetically you are in a circumstance where you abstained from the consumption of animal products only one time, right? Let's say somebody had just adopted like a plant-based diet, like for one day, and they chose soy milk instead of cow's milk, right? That wouldn't be practicable according to your definition if they only did it once. Let's say they bought that soy milk instead of cow's milk, and then they walked outside in the parking lot and they got hit by a truck. What they just did was not practicable. Because in order for it to be practicable and can be effectively done, it has to be effectively done over and over again, repeatedly.
Well, no,
So
it has to
only
be
one
something
instance.
you can do over and over again. And then,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But if you like get killed right after, like, obviously you couldn't do it over and over again. But like in the moment of, being able to do it, I mean, you thought that, and I think it's rational to believe that you'll probably be able to do this over and over again.
Okay. So let's say somebody who is physically disabled, let's say they're like in a wheelchair and they can't go out and buy food for themselves. Like, I don't know, like Stephen Hawking or something. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't go out and buy like a plant-based food options. Would it no longer be practicable for them to be vegan?
I mean, if
because they're incapable of effectively getting plant-based foods.
Well, I think it's important to realize that veganism, like, even to the vegan society definition, isn't necessarily about eating plants. So, like, yes, if they can't get to the plants, then I don't think that through the vegan society definition we should judge them for not getting the plants. Like, if they can in literally any like possible or practicable way, then yes, we should say that they're not vegan to that definition. Like, and this is why I agree that it's not a very good definition. Like, I don't know if Stephen Hawking can like crawl or whatever, but like he could crawl to the grocery store or some shit. And I think there could be a case
He can't move. He's a
to be
paraplegic.
made for that. Oh, well, if he can't move, then yeah. Well, he's like rich. He could call someone to go do that shit or whatever.
Yeah, I'm talking about like himself.
Himself, if he was like broke and didn't have anything.
Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be practicable again. So it wouldn't be practicable for him to be a vegan then.
No, it wouldn't be practicable for him to get the plants. I would still argue that he would be a vegan under that definition, as long as the other criterions are met.
But it wouldn't be practicable for him to follow up like a plant-based diet, to exclude exploitation and cruelty from his lifestyle.
No, that's the point.
Which is what we're measuring
this
definition of. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's the point. It's not practical. It doesn't make any sense for him to do that. If it would make sense, if it was practicable for him to do it, then he wouldn't be vegan if he didn't do it. That's the point.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So again, my interpretation of practicable is different. I'd say I just go off the Google definition. I just say practicable is any capacity which is able to be done. And you disagree with that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you could allow me to elucidate on why I believe following that definition of practicable would lead to suicide.
The definition that you have, or the definition that I have?
That I have.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I don't even know if I'll disagree, but go ahead.
Okay. So, well, I mean, if you don't disagree, then there's really no point.
Well, let's just see if I do disagree, because I don't know.
Okay. So, yeah. So, hang on.
Take your time.
Yeah. So again, like I said, the definition, it requires that adherents of it exclude all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals for any purpose in any way that is able to be done. and you would agree that suicide is able to be done.
Yes, if it is about, I mean, yes, in a sense, like I'm not sure if I'm like grasping the whole picture because it's like if you could reduce it even more, like if you didn't kill yourself, it kind of sounds like it wouldn't make any sense to kill yourself even under that definition. But I might be like forgetting about something.
Mhm.
Let's
Well,
say
I
you
mean,
had like you reliably know that if you don't kill yourself, more suffering would be reduced, and it's possible and practicable to reduce more suffering, then you'd actually be disadvantaging the animals by killing yourself.
right, but I'm not talking about reducing suffering.
So you're
The definition says nothing about reducing suffering. It says everything about excluding, right, exploitation and cruelty to animals for any purpose.
I'd agree with you, unless
Okay.
it's about like the maximum amount of exclusion that you could possibly do, and then if you keep on living, you could exclude it more.
Mhm.
Oh, is it like an absolutist thing, like you can't do it at all, or else like you're not vegan?
Well, like I said before, like
Are you still there?
yeah, 1 sec. Just thinking. Yeah, like I said before, like exploitation and cruelty like is inevitable as long as you exist, right? Otherwise, the definition wouldn't have included it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So my argument is that suicide excludes all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals.
I mean, like when they're talking about like 'cause when they're talking about excluding it as far as like possible and practicable, I mean, like it's possible. I don't really see how you can get past the reductio of like your position where I'm saying like, oh, let's say that you killing yourself would actually, um, you know, as a cause, more, exploitation and cruelty will be occurring. And if you keep on living, more of that will be excluded. I don't see how that's not compatible with the definition, unless you're also adding into the definition that it can't happen at all. Because it's like they know that it's going to happen. It's like, okay, well, if you can reduce it, like, what's the issue? I don't really see where the definition says that that's, bad to keep on living. If keeping on living would reduce more cruelty than killing yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it follows that if you're dead, you can't exploit or act cruelly to anything. Right?
I think, and I think it follows that if you're dead, you also can't prevent any, cruelty.
But the definition doesn't say anything about preventing, right?
Yeah, all it says is excluding, right?
Yeah.
And if you exclude more by not killing yourself, then how is that not the better option? Right. And how is that not in line with the vegan society definition?
I would agree. I would agree with that, right? But it's not. But no matter what you do, if you're alive, you're going to be exploiting animals or acting cruelly to them in some capacity, right?
Yes, I don't really see how that's relevant, unless the vegan society holds like the absolutist principle that that's always immoral. But if you're just talking about excluding it, I don't see how it's then logical to say, okay, well, I'm going to keep living my life because I can exclude it even further than if I killed myself. And not even just exclude it from my life, exclude it from all of these other people's lives and other animals' lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, the definition is seeking. The definition says that a vegan is somebody who is trying to seek to exclude these practices, right?
Yeah, and you can exclude it even more if you don't kill yourself in this hypothetical.
How is that?
Well, it's just the ramifications of the hypothetical. Let's say you're like this Martin Luther King type figure. I'm not even actually sure what all, cruelty Martin Luther King excluded, but let's say you're this type of figure who, if you killed yourself now, you would never get to that level. You would never, ever be able to speak about this sort of shit. Um, you would never ever be able to influence lawmakers and make them, increase animal welfare or even abolish animal agriculture as a whole. And if you kill yourself, that's obviously not going to come to fruition. So in this hypothetical, it makes more sense to keep living because then you'd exclude more. How is this not in accordance to the definition? Because it's anti-cruelty, it's anti-suffering. And I don't know where it says that you can't commit it at all or else you're immoral. Like if it's possible, you ought to just, not do it at all. It's like, if you're reducing more, like, wouldn't that be better? Like under the definition?
It's not talking about reducing. It's talking about excluding.
Yeah, I'm using that synonymously right now.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
So the problem is that ending your own existence is the most effective means by which to stop exploiting or acting cruelly to animals.
Necessarily, like in the hypothetical that I put forth.
Okay, let's say it's the fastest and most surefire way of excluding all forms of exploitation and cruelty.
Fastest? Like I don't see why that would be relevant.
Yeah. Well, why would you want to? Okay, if you want to be a vegan, right? Then why would you want to perpetuate exploitation and cruelty if you could just eliminate it completely instantly?
When you're talking about like fast, it's like okay, I don't know why you would take the short-term benefit over the long-term, overall well-being, like or the overall. Sorry, I didn't mean to say well-being. The overall. What was the word you used? The overall reduction in cruelty you cause and that sort of thing. It's like I don't know why you would just go for the quick, just like the quick fix when you could do something and it would actually reduce even more, exploitation and that sort of thing. So it's possible and practicable to do that. So why would you kill yourself if continuing on living would, reduce more fucking exploitation and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go on. I kind of forgot where I was going.
Right. So it says as far as is possible and practicable. Right. So that would suggest to me that you would seek the best method of ameliorating exploitation and cruelty.
Yes. And how is that not to keep living if keeping on living would reduce it more than killing yourself?
Well, I mean, you could say hypothetically, like, oh, like what if, right?
Well, yeah, and I'm saying if it is true, like that keeping on living, like that it will, then yeah. But I don't know why you would then kill yourself if there's a possibility that it could be the exact opposite. And I have like a similar contention to antinatalism. It's like you're not really thinking of all of the possibilities. And it's like, yes, if they knew that they're gonna, cause more than if they killed themselves, then sure. But like, I don't really think you can make that claim that you know that.
Mm-hmm. So I would also say because the definition, it says excluding all forms of exploitation and cruelty. So if you are excluding some forms of exploitation and cruelty, that wouldn't be acting in accordance with the definition. You would be needing to exclude all forms that you could possibly do.
And
the only way to do that is
that's what you're doing. If you kill yourself, you're letting more just be perpetuated.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
then you're
in accordance
not there
with the definition. You can let exploitation and cruelty happen, right? But you must exclude it from your lifestyle to be a vegan.
I didn't know you were talking about just, your lifestyle. Like within your lifestyle,
veganism is a way of living.
Yeah, if that's what you mean by that, then I mean I guess. But
well,
if you could reduce more, like yeah.
Mm-hmm. You cut out. I didn't hear you.
No, I was finished. I don't know where I cut out. So.
Mm-hmm. So it says as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation and cruelty. So if you are eliminating certain forms of exploitation and cruelty, like in the example you gave, like Martin Luther King, he was excluding like slavery from society, right? But he was still exploiting and acting cruelly to like animals for purposes.
Well, yeah, this is what I said
So
from the
that
jump.
wasn't
Like,
all forms.
yeah,
It was just some forms of exploitation and cruelty. So he wouldn't be a vegan. The only way to be a vegan is to exclude all forms from your given lifestyle. And the only way to do that is to kill yourself. Because life entails exploitation and cruelty inherently.
yeah, like I said, like I wasn't really sure. Like, well, good thing you gave me clarity on that. But like, yeah, if they have this like absolutist, um, this sort of principle that it's always immoral and it's always immoral to perpetuate it, even if it's for the greater good, then yeah, like I'd agree with you.
Well, it doesn't have to be absolutist. I'm just arguing like literally what it says.
Well, yeah, I'm saying if it says that it's always immoral to do it, then that is like an absolutist principle.
Well,
it's a little bit like
there are no. It didn't. Right. It doesn't. It doesn't specify any exceptions to this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in order to be vegan, you need to be dead.
Yeah, under this definition and under what you're presupposing with your definitions of the words within the definition.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, because suicide excludes all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals, and suicide is possible and practicable according to my interpretation of the definitions of possible and practicable. Right, my basis is Google, just like you've used Google in the past, no problem there. You just have a different interpretation. Suicide entails death, right? And you can exist if you're dead. Therefore, vegans don't exist. That's my argument. And
Yeah.
I haven't heard so far a refutation of that.
Well, I didn't come here to be a semantic prescriptivist.
It's okay.
I mean, it's what you wanted to argue for. So, I mean, like, I don't know why you're thinking that I'm here to defeat your argument.
Well, because you're taking the opposition of the debate proposition that vegans don't exist. Therefore, you believe vegans exist.
Well,
so
yeah.
I'm arguing against you.
Yeah. Yeah. You agree with me in the same sense that I agree with you. So, like,
in what?
In that my interpretation of vegans do exist.
I didn't concede that. But you did concede, on the other hand, that my interpretation, following from the Google definition of practicable and possible, vegans don't exist, right? You'd agree.
Yeah, to your interpretations and to yeah. I mean, that's just yeah. I don't really see that as a controversial thing. Like, yes, if everything you're saying, if I accepted it to be true, you would be true. That's just a sound argument.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, with semantics, it's a little bit like confusing. It's discussion, but like I don't really see how informative it is. This is just different interpretations. It's like,
well, give me a moment to formulate some kind of hypothetical according to your definition of practicable, and then once I do, I'll let you know.
Right. Well, just so you know, I'm not 100% sure, like on my definitions of that. Maybe we can stay in contact and make like a round 2 or whatever. But I mean, like, and for beyond in the general saloon, it's like, I didn't mean to say sound. I meant to say valid. So like with I don't actually agree that it's true, like that his definitions are, or that these definitions are what should be accepted. They're not what I accept, but like, given that these are true, and I'm not going to sit here and act like, oh, you're wrong for having this definition just because I have a different interpretation. I think that's stupid. But yeah, I think that accepting your definitions, yes, you are right. If I accept your definitions. And that shouldn't really be controversial. I think I'd agree with pretty much everyone if I accepted their definitions.
Okay. So already I found a bit of a contention with your definition of practicable. So you say practicable means that it can be done effectively over and over.
Pretty much.
That it's possible.
I mean, it's kind of shaky ground because I'm not like this is kind of shaky ground because I've like never had this conversation. I've never really thought about this. But
Do you
sure.
concede that it's a bad definition?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't thought about it enough.
Okay. So, effectiveness, right? Would you agree that that's relative?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, what may be effective for one person may not necessarily be equally as effective for another person.
Yeah, you might not be able to effectively do it as much as the next person can. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, for instance, here in Canada, we get very cold weather, depending on the season, the region, etc. And actually, about 80 people actually die here every year from overexposure to the cold. But essentially, the higher up north you go, the colder the weather is, which makes it progressively harder to grow certain edible plants. So they need to be shipped in, which raises the cost of goods, making it less easy for someone to stay in like Nunavut. Resolute specifically is like the highest up north, I guess, area I can think of right now. It'd be harder for them to afford plant-based foods like a can of beans compared to someone, say, in Montreal. And which is also why the higher up north you go, the greater prevalencies you'll find of hunting, because it's the only way for many people to be able to survive and provide for their families, right? So my contention with your definition relies on, I guess, how you define, obviously practical, but it's that effectively word is highly contentious, right? Because it's relative. And that you'll probably say there's some threshold in this person's circumstance where it's difficult enough for that person to choose plant-based foods, such that it's morally acceptable for that person to hunt and kill animals for food. Right?
Like I said, like for one, like I don't hold this definition, and for two, like even if I did, well, I'm not sure about even if I did because I'm sure a lot of people who hold this definition do, but like I don't equate being vegan to being moral. Just so you know, like I'm fine with saying something is vegan, but it's immoral.
Oh, really interesting. Okay.
And also, like following a plant-based diet, like
never heard of vegan in that before.
Yeah, I say
when I say vegan in this context, when I say vegan in this context, I mean self-proclaimed vegan because I obviously don't believe vegans can exist. So, just for the sake of argument, for anyone wondering, I think a vegan is someone who calls himself a vegan. Just for this discussion, but right. So, my problem is that I don't know where that benchmark is between how difficult it must be in a person's given circumstance for them to no longer be able to act themselves in accordance with this definition of practicable. Because again, it's relative. What may be effective for one person to do over and over may not necessarily be equally as effective for another person to be able to do over and over. Right?
I don't see why that would be a contention. It would just be that
my contention is that I don't know where that benchmark is, right? And probably neither do you, which is probably why we can't seem to come to any agreement on it. But no matter where you draw the line, it can just as easily be drawn somewhere else by someone else, and there isn't any way for anyone to demonstrate why the line drawn by one person is any less legitimate than a line drawn by another person somewhere else, without claiming, I just feel like that's where it should be. And I don't find that convincing.
And that's kind of funny you say that, like, yeah, it's arbitrary. Well, the same thing could be said about your whole argument and your whole, definitions and everything like that. So, like, yeah, if it would be arbitrary, I don't really see the contention for that, given that's what you've done this whole debate.
Well, that's a Tuchel-Quay fallacy, but not omitting that. I don't know how difficult it must be in a person's given circumstance for them to not be following this practicably, according to your definition. Obviously, it's arbitrary. Definitions are arbitrary. That's not controversial. What I'm saying is I don't know how effective it must be for one person for it to be considered practicable for them to follow.
Well, it's not how much. It's if they can effectively do it over and over. It's whether it's effective or not. It's not like a percentage.
Okay. Right. That doesn't defeat my objection, though, right? Like you agreed that effectiveness is relative.
But yeah, it changes like per person. But I mean, like you're saying, well, like how effective does it have to be for it to be like okay to not do it? It's like, yeah, if it's not effective, then yeah. Well, at least to this definition, because like I said, it's kind of hard because I don't hold this definition. But like, yeah, if it's not effective, then it's immoral, at least to this definition. And if it is effective, or no, if it's not effective to keep doing something, then you shouldn't be held culpable for not doing it. And then if you can do it over and over, then you should be held culpable for not doing it, and you should do it.
For doing what?
For for like killing an animal. For like if you can effectively do it, like you can effectively not do it over and over, then yeah, that would be like practicable. But if you can't, and you could only like not do it once or some shit like that, then yeah, that wouldn't be practicable.
Okay. So if you can effectively not kill an animal over and over, then it would be practicable.
Yeah, I don't know. My thoughts are kind of scrambled right now. Just one second.
Okay.
But yeah.
Right. So you are aware that effectiveness exists like on a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not exclusive or exclusive in the context that you're giving it to me.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like something can be effective or it can be ineffective. Like, and I think that's what I would do if I was holding this definition.
Okay.
Like,
so what is your definition of effective?
Oh, it's like whether or not you can do it. Like, I don't know. It's kind of circular,
Possible?
but I don't know how else to define it.
Well, I thought that was your definition of possible. So is your definition of effective possible? In which case, why wouldn't you just replace the word practicable with possible? Like I just said, practicable.
Well, it's whether you can do it over and over. So, like, possible to do it over and over. Like, yeah, that'd be fine. But that's different than just possible.
So they must be able to do it over and over again.
Yes.
To be able to not kill an animal in this example over and over, for it to be practical in this context.
The way you're wording things are just very confusing to me.
Well, I guess you find the Google definitions confusing then.
No, it's not the Google definitions, just the way you're wording these questions. Like, I don't understand.
Okay. What don't you understand?
Just like I don't. It's kind of I don't even know where to start. It's just like, yeah.
Okay. Well, then I don't know how to clarify it.
But yeah, like I don't know how to say the confusion. It's just like I don't understand the question.
Okay. Would you agree that effectiveness is an adjective, successful in producing a desired or intended result?
Effectiveness, yes. Like whether it's like successful or not.
Okay. So right. So if it doesn't succeed, if you do not succeed in producing your desired or intended result, it's not effective.
It wasn't effective in doing what you desired. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not effective, and then by extension, not practicable, because it wasn't done effectively over and over again, because it wasn't effective.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So right. So this definition is predicated upon desire or intention. So if you have no desire or intention to not kill an animal, right, then, right, you wouldn't be acting in accordance with the definition of practicable. Then you wouldn't be a vegan. Okay.
Sorry, like I literally don't understand what you just said.
Well, I'm just literally like reformatting your same definition and presenting it back to you, but that's okay. Let me try to construct another hypothetical.
So just so you know, I do have to go soon.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, according to your definition of practicable, it could be practicable to literally be a carnivore. Literally just eat meat all day, every day, if that's your intention or desire.
But yes, but
as long as you are successful. Yeah, as long as you're successful in attaining that.
But yes, but what does this have to do with the vegan society definition? Because they're not just saying practicable, period. They're saying practicable to reduce suffering.
No, it's not.
Then what do you mean? Like,
it says practicable. No. It says a vegan is someone who seeks to reduce or exclude. Now I'm using your wording. Seeks to exclude all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals.
Mm-hmm.
It says nothing about reducing suffering. We can go down that road, and I can prove to you again why reducing suffering, the reductio on that would be also suicide.
Oh,
but
like
I'm just saying, according to your definition of practicable, you could be a carnivore and be a vegan as a carnivore.
I don't see how that follows. How it would follow to say like, okay.
Let me explain. So, based on your definition of effective, right? You agreed with a Google definition of effective, which is successful in producing a desired result, a desired or intended result, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if your desire or intention is to eat meat, only meat, every single day, all day, that would be doing it over and over again. And as long as you are successful in attaining that desire or intention, it would be effective and by extension practicable to only eat meat all day, every day. It would be practicable. Right?
Look, I never said everything that was practicable was vegan, because they even said practicable in excluding cruelty and exploitation, don't they say? So it's not just whatever's practicable is vegan. There's actually more to it. It's like you're oversimplifying it. Just what's practicable. Just like how it's not just what's possible. Like, if that's your criteria, then like literally everyone is vegan because everyone's doing, well, no, it's actually the opposite. And everyone isn't vegan because no one's doing everything that's possible.
Right. So why would you include a word like practicable in your definition if it allows?
I never said I would. I don't hold this definition.
Well, then why did you
I'm just
define
debating
practicable? Oh, okay.
I defined practicable because, like, I don't know, I'm just trying to defend this, even though I don't hold this definition, just so you know. And this is why it's kind of like complicated, because this isn't something I expected to defend. But I mean, like, if your argument hinges on it, like, you know, I'm not gonna like try to make you like just change your whole argument, you know. But, yeah, like I said, I agree that I don't like this definition. I think the definition is like too fucking vague, and someone interesting who would actually defend this definition like genuinely would be like perspective philosophy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Um, yeah, so that'd be interesting. But yeah, how long has this debate been going? Whoever's recording. And I think it's good to just like call it here.
Okay.
But yeah, do you want any finishing thoughts? And then I'll just give mine.
Sure. So, yeah, I guess in conclusion, like the commonly regarded definitions of veganism, at least the Vegan Society one, reduces one to non-veganism because they cannot be adhered to if you're alive and by extension exist. So, and I think until we establish a definition that avoids this, we should abstain from calling ourselves something we simply cannot be. Right? I think we should make the labels we assign to ourselves correspond as accurately as possible to the reality they seek to describe. And since veganism, as it's defined, or at least my interpretation of how it's defined based on the Google definition that most people commonly agree upon, including you agree upon certain Google definitions. You just rejected this one, I think, because it's convenient for you. But omitting that, because of how it's defined, it cannot be adhered to, as I've demonstrated. And we should avoid labeling ourselves as such until a definition is presented that avoids, I guess, the quandaries that I've made apparent. And so I'll conclude by once again reasserting the truth that you have all been made aware of, that vegans don't exist.
Okay, so like I said, like in the beginning of the debate and before this debate, I basically like I knew where this was going. It's just like semantically, like to your definitions of these things, like what bottoms out of the vegan society definition, mind you, is that we have to kill ourselves to be a vegan, but then it also follows that if you're dead, you don't exist. I didn't completely know that about your position. I think that you're definitely a competent debater and everything. I still disagree, and I still think it's kind of pointless to debate this unless you're trying to prescribe semantics or people are just going to agree with you on this. I mean, like I am working on trying to prescribe semantics, but like I don't feel all too confident in that yet. That's why I haven't done it now. But if we want to do a round two and I can actually define some words because like I didn't write anything for this debate. But yeah, so my apologies for being a little bit unprepared on that. Maybe next time we can stay more in contact so then I can actually have the things at hand that you would like to go into. But yeah, I want to thank the Arthuria, if that's how you pronounce it, server for holding this debate. I want to thank FutileGod. And yeah.
All right. Thanks for talking.